Well, thanks for doing this, first of all.
Yeah, yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time out. It's great to get to talk to you. Um, we'll get on to it later on in more detail because I want to talk to you about coffee first. But you are a fantastic pitch side, court side, I don't know, whatever
Oh, thank you.
reporter.
Oh, thank you.
Um, that's how we first got in touch. I messaged you after Wadapalooza last year. No, this year,
This past year.
January.
Yeah.
Because I just think you're brilliant at it, and it's a really, really hard thing to do. Like it's impossible not to sound, well, it's almost impossible not to sound just vapid, because like what can you ask? You know what I mean? Like when they're coming off, they're fucked. Like they're breathing really heavy. They can't talk. They can't even think.
Yeah.
And I mean, like all respect to an athlete who comes off the floor and gives any kind of a coherent answer after doing like Fran or whatever. And like
Yeah.
I just puke on the microphone, I think, and walk off. But like I just think it's so difficult to make it not just so how is that, and just have the classic like, oh, I think I executed well. You know, like it's good. It's a really tricky thing to do, and I think you do it really well.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
but we'll
Wadapalooza.
talk,
Oh yeah, if you want, we'll get into it later. But yeah, that was my first time ever doing it.
yeah, I think that's what made me message, because I was like, that's seriously impressive. Because like, there's people that do it. Um, there's people that do that kind of thing in different sports all the time, and you're like, how are they doing this? Like, how do they have that? How are they still doing this? Because it's not like, it's just kind of a waste of 2 minutes, like, or a waste of whatever. But like, yeah, because my wife and I both watched Wadapalooza, and we were both like, gosh, she's actually really good at it. Like usually that's just the kind of dead time where you're like, all right, go back up to whatever the commentators. But it was very good. And that's no disrespect to anyone else that does it, but well, I
Yeah.
suppose it probably is, but it's not intended as that. Um, so you tagged me in your stories there a little while ago, and I've been watching you have a wedding coming up or something, is it?
Oh yes, I have so many. I have like 8 of them this year. I've gone to 2, or yep, 2, and I have like 6 or 7 more to go.
Oh my
So
god.
we have one this Friday, and then the end of the month, and then September, and then October. We just booked it. It's in Cabo, from one of my old teammates from. And sorry if you hear barbells dropping.
No, it's an authentic sound.
Okay, yes, you'll hear that. Yeah, so my old teammate from the CrossFit Games in 2018 is getting married. She's a firefighter.
Wow.
Yeah, and so she's marrying another firefighter, LA City, and
Wow,
so
okay.
they're doing it in Mexico. So we just booked our tickets, and we're going to do that in October.
Cool. That's really cool. 8 weddings, that's a lot.
Oh man, I think yeah, the pandemic like pushed everything back, and so everyone's kind of now booking it. And so
Yeah.
friend just texted me. She's like, "Hey, I have one. Save January or February. Like, what date?" I was like, "All right, like one a month. Let's do this."
Yeah. It's like save the date. It's like, I just don't care anymore. It's like, woohoo.
I was like,
Yeah.
stop doing this to us, please. We're bored. We're poor. We're broke. We can't do anything.
At least when it's text, you can like feign. You can just send like 5 emojis and it's good. It's fine. You don't have to actually pretend that you're enthused about it. So you've cut out creamer and sugar,
Yeah.
which
So,
is obviously affecting your coffee
oh
drinking
man.
habits.
Okay, so to be honest, I don't even really drink a ton of coffee. I just kind of got in the coffee scene, and then
Yeah.
even then, you know how I guess most people start. It's going to be tons of like creams and sugars and like all those
Yeah. It's a dessert.
Oh yeah, it's really I have a coffee milkshake is really what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I put on so much weight on the pandemic, and then just like after I was done competing, I thought I would kind of like go down in weight, and I started gaining so much and just can't get it off. So I'm like, something has to change, and I'm like, okay, here's a good start. Let's start with the coffee. So I took out cream and sugar, and I've been testing out that the past week and a half or so, and it's really disgusting. Maybe I'm going to the wrong places, but everyone's like, oh man, like try this, try a little bit of almond milk, try stevia, try an Americano, all the fancy names. And so I did find one that I like. And so it is a filtered soul. It's like a hazelnut cold brew. And
Okay.
not bad. It's pretty good. I think I can stick with this.
Yeah, because I saw one of the days you put up a thing, and it was one of the first days I saw you talking about it, and you were like, "Oh, no creamer, no sugar," and I think, was it a Starbucks mug, Starbucks cup?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fucking hell, like that's asking for trouble. Like yeah, no, it's not. Um, I mean, like they're not so their business isn't suffering, but like it's no. Like if you're gonna have just black coffee,
Yes.
you can't
Do
like no, you can't do any. You can't. It's like you might as well get like um. Have you guys got that? You know that like Nescafe Dolce, whatever. You know, like it's like you take a teaspoon of coffee of like instant or whatever.
Okay, yes.
You might as well just drink that. It's just piss water.
Okay.
Um, where you're in California?
Yeah, I'm in like LA. It's like a beach town, like Torrance Redondo Beach area. It's like actually like 10, 15 minutes from where Carson, where they used to have the games over here.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah.
Because I know I had Joshua Shama on before, and he said that there's a place in LA, and he held it up as the best coffee he had had, and I can't remember the name of it, but I know you don't sit down.
Okay.
It's like a storefront, but you don't actually. I don't think you actually go in.
Oh.
Oh fuck, I can't remember the name of it. Like what? I don't know why I brought that up because like what are the chances of me remembering the name of a coffee shop that it was told like 18 months ago?
Yeah.
And then there's another place that loads of people in California talked about. And it begins with a V, and they have their own roasters as well. Oh fuck, I'm really going down. I'm just sliding down a slope here where I can't remember anything. It's not Velo. Fuck. I'll find it and I'll send it to you. But yeah, if you wanna go just black with nothing in it, you need to go to someone who preferably has. They need to have like one of like four things. They need to be wearing a leather apron
Okay. I need to make a checklist.
and or have a mustache
Okay.
or like like slightly unusual facial hair.
Okay.
They need to have like not a full fade, but like what do you call that? You know, where a taper. You know, where the bottom of your hair is cut. Yeah. And maybe well, I'm not sure what the weather's like in California, but I was going to say wearing flannel. If you can picture them wearing flannel in the winter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of feel like you have a mustache. Do you have that tapered hair look or no?
Yeah, but you see, I just kind of vainly attempt to look like someone who knows something about coffee, but I don't really know that much. But yeah, it's one of the that's a very male centric. Obviously, I wouldn't expect you to go and find a female who has interesting facial hair and wears flannel and has a a specific haircut. But yeah, no, that's what you're looking for. Yeah, going to like Starbucks and starting off with black. That's
Yeah,
torture, I'd
everybody
say.
was like, absolute, like, no, don't
Yeah.
do that. Don't do that. Wait, so I want to
No.
know. So you're like a huge coffee connoisseur, and
Yeah, I don't know if I call myself that because I sound like a total prick. I like coffee. I like drinking coffee, and I
how do you,
say again.
how do you drink yours?
I usually drink flat white.
Ah, see, everyone's recommended that too. Probably not from Starbucks, but
Yeah, but see, if you're not having milk and stuff, because it wouldn't be the same with almond milk. But if you're not having milk and stuff, that's like it's like a double shot of espresso and then like milk.
milk. Yeah,
So like it's kind of defeating the purpose of what you're trying to do.
I have to cut out my like fats from somewhere else and put it in my coffee. I think that everyone's like, do not cut it out of your coffee. So
Yeah,
it's not like it's so bad. It's just that I was having so much that I
I
needed.
mean, what's the purpose of those kind of things of like trying to lose weight or whatever is to have it sustainable. And if you're going to be like forcing like funneling down coffee just so you can drink it, it's not. You're eventually going to be like, give me one with ice cream in it.
Right. And that's why I'm trying not to do like paleo, like cut out all carbs. So I'm like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
eat like that forever. So I want to do something sustainable where I'm like, okay, cool. I can see myself moving forward like this. I mean, to be honest, I just eat a ton of desserts and I eat a ton of sugary, creamy coffee. So I was like, let's just start there. Let's just start with cutting out that and see where it goes from there.
How are you finding it? How are you getting on? Like, obviously,
Ugh.
apart from
It's the most frustrating thing ever. So basically, I made a bet with this guy from my gym. He's like, "Oh man, I need to lose 15 pounds," and I was like, "Good, I need to lose 10." And so we're doing like this contest. You can lose it first. And in the first, okay, I get it. It's been 1 week and 1 day, but I have gained weight. I've gone up on the scale, and like I just feel bloated and like not good. And he's like, "Oh man, I came in, I lost 5 pounds." I'm like, "Great, I went up 5." So now I have to lose 15, and he has to lose 10. So it's just like I'm hoping it's like that's what happens at the beginning, and then from there, then I'll find my bearings and kind of like start going downhill from there. But I think it's just consistency, right? Like sticking with it, keep on doing it. You know, even if you don't see the results or feel them yet, like keep going, hammering away, and
Yeah.
it'll slowly but surely come off. Hopefully.
Yeah, it is hard though. It's hard when I think there's two things that are hard. One is if you have a bad day of it. So if you do something, or even just a bad meal where you do something stupid, and then you're just like, you have that like, oh fuck it, you know, and you're just like, I've ruined it anyway. I might as well just like, I'll start again on next Monday week. It's like when you should just be like, start again immediately. And then the other thing is, yeah, if you're doing it and you're like, why is it not having an effect? And it's that thing of, you know, like that graph where you're at the top of the hill, but you don't realize you're at the top of the hill and you just go back down. Yeah,
Yes. And like someone suggested, like, why don't you take a picture every day? So like, okay, I have a picture, and like, you know, for like as athletes, like we just want immediate results. I'm like, dude, I'm working hard. Like I want to see it pay off right now. And so I'm like, taking a picture. I'm like, I look the same or even worse than I started on Monday. Like there's no change. And like gradually over time, like, yeah, but I'm just have to be patient, which is not.
yeah. No, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And so you played basketball before doing CrossFit. Were you like your whole childhood and everything active, or did you find sport like in college or?
Yeah, so I actually grew up, and it's kind of funny. You were talking about my nieces and nephews. They're 6, and they just started playing in this basketball league. So kind of interesting. Like in Southern California or California region, there's a lot of Japanese Americans here. But during World War II, during the war, they sent my grandparents and those generations to internment camp. And so my grandparents, born and raised in Los Angeles, like had to pack up, take 2 bags for their families and move. Like they put them in the Santa Anita horse stables first while they were building these camps for them. And so my grandpa went to Arkansas. My grandma went to Wyoming. My other grandpa, which is really interesting, he served in the military. So he was like, this was happening to his family, but he was serving the United States. And so it was just this interesting time, you know. So after the war, when they all moved back, you know, Japanese Americans were segregated. And so we started they started Japanese American leagues for basketball and different sports so that we can like feel, you know, involved and get to plan things. And so those are the leagues that I grew up playing in. So I started playing basketball at the age of 4. And in the same gym, the same place that my nieces and nephews were at. So it was just really interesting. Like I was like, oh man, this cycle is like all over again. And it's interesting to hear them talk about, they're like, this league is for friendships and families, and we don't care what your skill level is. There's so many club teams and you have to be so good to play, or, you know, but they're like, here it's about like all those important things of friendship, family, and like, and learning and playing a sport. So like that hopefully you end up loving. So I started playing basketball at the age of 4 and kind of played all different kinds of things like sports growing up, but basketball was my main love.
Your so the other grandfather, was he Japanese as well?
Yeah, all of them Japanese American. And so
he essentially wasn't put in a camp because they like looked at him and were like, oh, hang on, he's serving a purpose. We'll keep him where he is.
Yeah, there's this called the Japanese military intelligence service, and so he was part of the MIS, and they're like one of the highly decorated Japanese Americans that served on the American side against the Japanese, you know, and he served as a translator. But my grandma's side went to Arizona for camp, so yeah, it was just very interesting to hear like. And it's cool. My grandpa tomorrow will be 96 years old.
Wow.
Still really sharp. So like he'll still tell us stories about camps and I think that's where like a lot of people ask like, where do you get your resiliency, or, you know, like these kind of things, or hard work and things like that. But like my grandparents, like they don't complain. They just made it back. And, you know, the stories he tells, like they played sports in camp, and my grandpa will say, he's like, I got a job at the mess hall because you got paid a little and you got to see all the girls come by, you know? So
what were the camps like? Holding camps, or were they like not?
Yeah, so like all Japanese Americans like on the West Coast were sent to internment camps because they didn't know, they thought you're part of like the enemy, you know what I mean? Part of like
just in case you were spies or something like that.
Yeah. So like so they like my grandpa was in high school, and so around that time, like 16, 17. So his parents obviously like had to give up their businesses and that kind of stuff. But yeah, and after the war was done, then they released them, and kind of they had to make their way back to LA and had to build back all of their jobs, their homes, their communities, everything.
You've been better off being a spy. Would have been easier. Okay, so basketball then. So is that the one with the net in the middle? No, I'm only kidding.
You're a soccer guy, huh? Football.
I was actually, I've genuinely, before I came in, I was like, I'm gonna make her think for the whole interview that I don't know what basketball is. Like I'm gonna misdescribe. Like I'm literally looking out my window and there's a basketball hoop like on the driveway. I was like, I'm just gonna like be like, I'm gonna describe netball and see how long it takes her to correct me and
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
no, you fucking idiot. How do you not know what basketball is?
Okay,
So sorry.
you a basketball fan, or you like to play, or are you?
No, that's the one where you throw it. No, I'm joking. No, I like. I'm fascinated by it when I see it, but like I can throw a ball, like not very accurately. I've seen your videos. Like I remember the joke video you put up like last week. I'm the first one that like just always misses. Um, I play a bit of what do you call that? Is it 21? You know where you move, where you
Yeah,
catch the ball and you can take 3 steps or whatever. I've played that a bit. So basically a pro. But
same thing.
no, I'm fascinated by it when I do see it. But we don't like there isn't a lot of coverage here, apart from the Olympics.
Oh, oh,
You don't really get to see a lot on terrestrial TV anyway. I think you might
hmm.
on like satellite or whatever. But no, like we'd never see like the NBA is never mentioned.
Really?
Yeah.
And I just saw the finals. I know it was streamed online, which was really great for
Mm.
international coverage. But maybe that's like kind of a newer thing. Yeah, it's not like the regular season's playing for you guys.
Yeah. Like on the news, on like say the what do you call it? Like the national broadcaster, like on the news for that,
Yeah,
they'll tell you who won the Super Bowl and they'll talk about the Super Bowl. And all the radio stations will talk about the Super Bowl
yeah,
before it's on and after it's on. Like kind of because of the show and stuff as well, I suppose. But like you'd
hear about.
never hear about basketball or baseball. Apart from
Oh,
that time, didn't someone win the World Series like after years of not winning or something? It's the
yeah,
same year Ireland beat New Zealand in the rugby.
got it. So your guys' sports are
Uh,
soccer or football,
Yeah,
and
football, rugby, like, and then all
oh,
the kind of boring, like golf, that kind of shit.
oh, that's cool. You play golf?
No, my father-in-law does. I
Nice.
don't get it. No, I basically watch CrossFit and football. I used to follow football a lot more, and now I just don't have the bandwidth. If I start relearning about football players and stuff like that, I'll forget about CrossFit people, and I don't want that. So I just kind of
Yeah, you have
yeah.
to be on it. You have to stay on it. Know all the like everyone who's
Yeah, like I kind of do and I don't like. I like. See, I'm not doing what you're doing. Like, say, I'm not. I'm not going to be live with a microphone, being like, "Oh fuck, I can't remember this person's name," or "Oh, I have no idea where they finished like
yeah,
last year or whatever." Like, I have the benefit of I can research
the
before.
Brian friends. Oh my god, he's
Crazy, and
amazing.
Hiller as well. Hiller is on
Oh
Savan's
yeah.
show, and
So
he
I
like
listen to your guys' podcast.
and
Yeah,
Taylor Self, another one, like, or oh, it's just silly how like I'm good at the relationship bit. I'm good at like, oh, he was coached by Ben Bergeron and then went to wherever, or she used to be with Training Think Tank and now she's on her own. Or like I'm good at that kind of stuff.
right,
But like I wouldn't be able to tell you the podium from 2017, or you know what I mean, like. But
right. All the like specific details.
yeah. But
Yeah,
no, there it's weird. Like it's weird. And like even but you had like I remember there was one episode during semifinals where it was like Brian Taylor. Oh fuck, I can't remember the guy's name. CrossFit Crash. What is his name?
um,
Oh,
I know you're talking about
yeah, he doesn't have his name on his Instagram. That's why I don't know it.
because yeah,
Anyway,
your name's
fuck. I'm sorry. He's really good. I can't remember his name. Um, and Hiller and Taylor Staff, and they were on it. And Savan just threw a question out, and like they all answered it within 3 seconds or something. It was like, has such and such a thing ever happened? And they were all like, yeah, and like they all answered basically in unison. And it was like, how did they all get there? Like there was no silence, there was no like tapping, like keypads or
right.
whatever. It was they were just like, oh yeah, 2014, such and such. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're literally like walking encyclopedias of CrossFit.
Yeah, it's like Rain Man.
Every like from all open regionals games, everything,
Yeah.
and
But
what they
even the Morning Chalk Up did their prediction and they got like 57 out of 70 something
yeah,
right. And like Brian will put up like, oh, not really sure about the African, like
yeah.
semi final or whatever. And he'll still get like 2 out of 3 or whatever. Like, it's
Yeah, it
like,
was interesting seeing his thing. He was like, "Oh, cool! Like, all the checks were right." one X is maybe like one spot differential, something like that. But yeah, super
No, it's
talented.
crazy. I think we're spoiled. Like, and I don't know, is it because like maybe the pool isn't as diluted as other sports? Like, if you look at basketball, or well, I assume, but if you look at soccer anyway, you could
There's
have there's so many different options for pundits and like experts and stuff, and
right,
it's some of it's so hit and miss, where you could have someone who is there just because they're always there, and they haven't, they've just like they're just an opinion, they're just a talking head or whatever, and they're just there because they've always been there, and it'd be weird if they weren't there. But then you have other people coming up, like, who have recently retired, or you have people who have, whatever. But I just think in CrossFit, everybody that's involved knows so much, and like cares so much. I think because it's such a young sport, I think we're really spoiled.
yeah, totally. And like I started paying attention, like after I retired, like and getting into this whole broadcast media, social media side of things, like it's very interesting, like paying attention now to like how everything works. Like it's a whole different production is amazing. And when I say like these people are like the best in the business, every event I've worked, the audio, the camera, everybody's like, oh yeah, I worked the Olympics, oh I did the Super Bowl halftime show, oh I did. I'm like, what? You guys do all of it? Like they literally handpick their favorites from the best in the business who are just really cool, nice, good people. And I was
Yeah,
like, you guys are like, this is like an all-star team. This is crazy. But it's
yeah,
so much like production meetings and how much goes into it, the time and sponsors and everything you have to get right and fit in there. It's a very on the other side because you just watch it. When I watch it, it comes across so great on broadcast, and you're like, wow,
yeah,
everything was so well put together, like ran so smoothly. And then you're like, oh man, sometimes it's like a shit show back there, and like they're putting
yeah,
ears everywhere, but they just do it, and you would never know.
yeah. But even like the people, like, say, just there's so like, there's a guy from CrossFit Bath, like Jason. He's put up some videos, but he's been doing it for a long time with no notice, but still doing it. And like, there's another guy like Chalking Fitness, who's like basically the UK's version of Brian Friend, like does all stats and
Yeah,
stuff like that. Same, he's been doing it, and he'd do it if nobody looked or nobody
totally.
cared.
Yeah,
And it's like, I think it's rare. The sport is rare in that kind of way, where like there's people who are really good at what they do, who just do it just because nobody else is doing it, or because they want to do it. And
right,
like, it improves everyone's experience of it, because like just everyone learns from it or is entertained by it or whatever. And like, year round, like, it's hard to find stuff to talk about in, like, November. Do you know what I
right.
mean? Like, it's hard to find stats. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, it's November, like nothing's happening until February. Like, who cares? But they'll find stuff, and they'll write articles and whatever. Like, it's crazy good.
Yeah.
Do you listen to podcasts often?
I don't have a ton. Like I will tell you, I don't listen to a ton of them, but I did listen to yours with Chris Cooper the other day, and I walked along the beach. I live close to the beach, so I like put it on, walked on the beach, and I was like, why don't I do this all the time? Like I was like, this is such a great, like I'm learning, I'm like, hearing different, and it actually like put, I put action to it, because I was like, you know what, I own the gym with my sister. We need to start like getting things like, I want to like
Yeah,
better gym and things like that. So it was I listened to that one, and it was really great. And like some of my guests are like for entertainment, some are for
yeah.
educational purposes, and I was like, I need to do this way more often. Yeah.
Yeah, fucking nobody listened to that one. And I don't know why. Like, I think so. Hiller he's one of the only guests who, like, after the fact, messaged me being like, "How did it do?" Like, he was,
Oh,
I think, I don't know, was he concerned that it wouldn't do
yeah,
well? Was he like keen for it to do really well? Like, was he just like, pretending he was interested or whatever? But I sent him a picture today of like the graph,
yeah,
and like, you can see like up and down, it goes like up a bit every Wednesday, down a little bit, then up again on a Friday, because I do Wednesday, Friday every week.
right.
um and then on his one, there's like a massive spike. And
Nice.
I sent it to him, and I was like, I said, it's the Hiller effect. And he was like, is that spike when it came out? And I was like, no, the little dot before it is when it came out, and the spike is because it came out. But then you can see that the Chris Cooper one, I was like, this is gonna be huge now, because like any affiliate owner will surely listen to this, because it's basically a free
Right.
like
Oh yeah,
seminar
totally.
or whatever. And no, it's like Hitler's up, and then it's just like just go straight back down. I was like, I just was flabbergasted by it. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. And it's that kind of thing. And it's the first time I've fallen into that trap in a long time, where I was like, this will do well. And
Yeah.
I haven't done that in ages. Like, it's well over a year since I've last been like, oh, I bet you this one will do well. And then I've checked and been like, what the fuck? Like, I just given up checking. I just don't care anymore. The only reason I looked at the picture was because Hiller had asked, how did it do?
Okay.
But yeah, that's one where I was like, oh, the Chris Cooper one will do really well, because like he doesn't do a lot of, I haven't heard him anyway, do a lot of external ones. They do their own stuff.
Right.
So I was like, oh, like this will be, and it's going to be, for someone listening, it'll be like an idiot asking questions, and like they're usually the kind of decent questions. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like,
he was like, you asked me the best question. He's like, what's one of the best questions I've ever heard?
Yeah, I always take that with a pinch of salt when people say it. I remember I interviewed Hinshaw, and he said it so many times. Like, he's like, that's a brilliant question. I'm like, I was like, part of me was like, is he mocking me? Like, are these questions really shit? And he's like, is this his sarcastic voice? And then another part of me was like, is he like plumosing me? Is he like, oh, you're really good at this, so I'll ask him just layups. I'll just be like, so like, what size shoe are you, or whatever. I'll be like, fuck it, everything's a good question.
Right. Yeah, no, you're really great. And like, that's funny. When I was interviewing one of the teams at Granite Games, I asked her the question, and she was like, that's a really good question. I was like, oh, okay,
like,
cool.
Oh, thank you.
But I don't want to make it too much an answer it, but yeah, great. Okay, I'm glad that this like means something. But yeah.
Stop stalling and answer the question.
Yeah. Oh man.
I remember someone told me before that it's what's the name of it? An ingression when someone says that's a good question, because like what they're doing is they're trying. Sometimes it's genuine, but I think some people, it's especially people who are like media trained, it's in a micro ingression or something, where they're trying to curry favor, buy time to think, and like not make it look, so they'll say like, oh, that's a really good question, and in their head they're like, fuck, like while I say to that, but the person asking the question is like, yeah, it is you're right, it is, I like you for saying that. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know how much I buy into that stuff.
I could do that.
How do you feel about being interviewed then? Because if you're usually the one asking questions, is it weird like being
no, I enjoy it. I think the majority, I think I just transitioned over to the other side. So for most of my like, or career or life or whatever, it's always been ask the questions, which I don't mind at all. But yeah, now I do pay attention to all the questions you ask, and just even when I'm watching like different sports, I'm like, oh yeah. And I'll tell you, they were like, try, especially when you're doing live stuff, they're like, we stay away from yes and no questions. And I was like, okay. And at Granite Games with Danny Spiegel, I was like, Danny, you tied, the PR barbell complex at 245. Is that the number you were gunning for? And she looks at me and she goes, yes. And I was like, in my head, I was like, oh shit, this is why you don't ask yes or no questions. But and then we have a friendship, so we just kind of laughed and like and went on to the next one, and she gave me more than that. But the people who really are just like, if they're exhausted or whatever, it's yes, and then if that's it, that's that question, and you move on to the next one. But yeah, so I it's interesting, like thinking. I mean, those are things I never even thought about. Like, you gotta formulate and see how you're going to ask these questions where it's not a yes or no. Which
do you watch other like people in the same role as you? Like, what's your man's name? Mike Arsenio, is it? Who was at Atlas, and he asked Adler. Oh, I can't remember what question he asked him, and Adler was like, "I wanted to win, so I won," and it was just like, "Fuck hell, all right, mate." It's like, Jesus. Like, do you watch other people doing it?
Oh yeah, totally. Because I'm learning now, and I think for Wodapalooza, what ended up happening was, last year they had asked me to do color commentary for the German Throwdown, which was all online. So I got to, speak on it. I didn't even know the different roles. There's a play-by-play who's like literally feeding you what's happening, the color analyst or color commentary or analyst who's explaining, oh, this is why
that guy's getting tired because of this.
Right. And technique and things like that. Yeah. And then there's the on-field or field reporter who's the only eyes on the field because everyone else is watching what they're putting on the cameras on screen. So then that part of that role is like, hey, coming down and checking pieces of, hey, Jane, for more on that, let's go down to Jamie, or what's going on, Jamie, or and then the live interviews after.
And do they pick when is it so obviously they go down to you, say, just like before the workout. There's usually that piece where the person is beside a piece of equipment saying, we're going to use this or whatever. I'm going to talk to you more about that later on. But like they'll say, oh, we're going to use the torque tank or whatever. And they'll talk a bit about the workout, and then they go back up and heat one starts or whatever.
Right.
But you know, that bit in between where sometimes they'll be like, oh, we're going to go down because Justin Kotler is there, or Tia
Yeah.
is there, or whoever is there, or else they just randomly go down. Are all of those like spontaneous, or is there like in the broadcast, do they say like, okay, this is a long workout, so in the middle of this we're going to go down to you and you need to have something to talk about?
Yeah, so they do. Part of production is like, hey, this is a longer workout. Like, we might have time to come down to Jamie, or like, hey, yeah, we're gonna plug someone in. Someone is here, so we'll make sure that we get to talk to them and you get to hear their point of view. Or hey, even if it's like, let us know, Jamie, if you're close by or you see somebody or something happens, like we'll come down to you. So it's kind of a little bit of both. I will a funny story. At Wadapalooza was my first time, and I didn't even understand like how this all worked, and so they're like, I ran to the bathroom because I was like, oh, we have a little bit of break. So I came back, and as soon as I came back, they're like, we're heading to you, Jamie. I was like, oh my God. And I like ran over to the spot, and I was like, and I had to kind of like be on, and I was like, oh shoot. Like, thank God I didn't miss my little segment,
Yeah.
But when I tell people that story, they're like, don't tell me you left your mic on when you're in the bathroom. And I was like,
That
oh,
is what I expected to happen.
yeah, I was like, oh, that's really embarrassing. And everyone that works TV is like, you won't be surprised how many times that happens.
I'd say it always happens.
Oh, if you're in the bathroom, or if you're talking, to like other people and you're not on live, or so things like that. So thank God that didn't happen to me. But yeah, so most of the time it's going to be like they're going to let you know if they're coming down to you. But,
And do you have to fill that yourself? Like, will they say to you, okay, we're going to come down in the middle of this chipper, best of luck, and then they just come to you? Or do they say, we're going to come down and we want you to talk about X, Y, or Z? And are you like listening to, we'll just say it's like Chase and Sean, are you
yes.
listening saying like, okay, they're talking about the height of the bars, so when they come back to me, I'm going to need to find someone here to ask a question so that I can say, well, I was just talking to such and such who said this.
Yeah, so they will. If there's certain pieces they want information on, or more information about, then they're like, I have to go do my research, which is really cool because even at Granite Games, in the athlete warm up area, like these are a lot of people. Some of them I competed against or know throughout the years of competition, and so it's kind of cool. I was like, I love to talk to people. I love to like just learn more about all different kinds of things. I don't have a problem going up to and like talking to anyone. So just kind of catching up with them and seeing what their game plan is, or what they think on this piece or that piece or any of that. So it's kind of like I need to do my homework and make sure, especially if it's like an equipment like the flip sled, hey, how getting anything about the length, the width, how heavy it is, all of that kind of stuff. But they're not just gonna like come down and be like, Jamie, how much does that weigh? I'm like, I don't know. It looks like 500. I don't know.
So it's pretty heavy. I was just told it's pretty heavy. And is it easier or harder then? Because like obviously if you know people from competing yourself, or just they might be from the local area or whatever, is it hard to like we'll just say an athlete is coming off the floor and you've been told, oh, you're going to talk to, I don't know, just like hypothetically, you're going to talk to Justin Medeiros. He's coming off the floor. He's just had a shit show and like it hasn't gone well for him. And I'm picking him because it like so rarely happens him. And he's coming off, and you're like, oh God, how do I ask him like what happened without like pissing him off or like making myself seem like insensitive or like an asshole? Like, is that tricky? Especially because it must be harder then as well if you're friends with them and they have like a bit of a nightmare and you're like, oh, I really don't want to ask them about it.
So the nice thing is like what I found, because I'm obviously this is my first and only experience with like media and broadcast. When you watch like other sports, like last night, I was watching WNBA women's basketball, and they talked to the coach who lost, and you talk to these players who lost, and like what happened in those final seconds, and those were the hard questions, because obviously, it's just their emotions are tied into that, and it didn't go the way they wanted. Fortunately for CrossFit, like I'm interviewing the winners, most likely. Yeah. Most of the time, it's going to be the heat winners. So, I mean, they're happy, even if they're dying and can't breathe. At least they're like happy with the results that there should be. And so every once in a while, maybe I'll have like the second place person or something like that. But yeah, it's not where I have to be like, oh, that really sucks. How does it feel to lose? You know?
Yeah, it's interesting because it would be compelling, but I suppose it's just you run a risk of, because it's such a like it's kind of subjective. Like I know in, say, soccer, you can get fined if you criticize a referee,
Oh,
like in your post-match interview.
wow.
And I know in, like, it's probably the same in other sports, but there's a rule in soccer where a coaching representative, either the manager or assistant manager, has to go and do an interview after the match, regardless of the
Yep.
result.
Yep.
And a player has to be made available regardless of the result.
Right.
And you can pick, I think, who goes out, but it has to be the manager or assistant manager. So then if the same was true in CrossFit, you could literally say like, okay, I want to talk to the person in lane 4, and they'd have to come and talk to you. But then I suppose the risk is, if it's a live broadcast and they come out being like, my fucking judge, like, you know, that kind of way, like that's the risk you run. Whereas if you pick the winner, you're always going to get, oh, I'm just happy to be here, Tom. You know, like you're never going to get like a bad
Yeah.
chat. Even
And
even if it's boring, it's going to be positive.
right. Well, and then what happened at Granite Games was Mal O'Brien. You know,
Yeah.
surprise, surprise, she won 4 out of the 6 events, and so every single time it was like, hey, let's interview someone else, or let's, you know, like
Yeah.
I think Mal ended up beating Emily Rolfe in that one long workout, but they're like, hey, let's get Emily on because that was the last day, and she was like right outside of a qualifying spot. So even though she didn't win that workout, she did really well. She finished second, and then she, you know, kind of think get her thoughts on trying to qualify. But I kind of feel like the coolest part of that was my first time doing that in a sense where they make it to the CrossFit Games. And so for me personally, I started CrossFit in 2011, and I was trying out for like the WNBA, I was getting ready for a basketball tryout. And so then when I didn't make the team in 2012, then that's when I kind of started pursuing CrossFit more full time. And so from 2012, I made regionals. The week of that I was supposed to go, I had jury duty in Long Beach, and I on my lunch breaks, I was obsessed with CrossFit. I went to train with them, and it was 100-meter sprints in the middle of the street, and I'm racing because my ass is so competitive. I'm racing all the guys and girls, and I blew out my hamstring, it popped, right? And I was like, oh God. And so I was like, but I didn't really know what, you know, regionals was, but the very first workout was Diane. So heavy deadlifts at the time, you know, back in 2012. And I was like, I can't deadlift. And I didn't even know. I was like, I can't go to regionals. I didn't even know what it was. And they're like, no, you have to. I'm like, well, what's the big deal? And so I went and watched, and I was like, this is so cool, like so cool. So then from then I started training. Like 2013, I made it. I missed it by 2 spots. I finished 5th at my first regionals with like these killers, like you know, Chris Clever, Val Voberl, Lindsay Valenzuela, Rebecca Voigt. And so I was really close. 2014, I finished 5th again. I missed it by 1 spot because they took Chris Clever. And then I thought, you know, 2015 was going to be my year to make it, and I tore my Achilles that year.
Oh,
and so, yeah, but when I finally made it in 2016, oh man, like I can't even tell you, like when they announced my name for that 5th, I took the last spot, that last 5th and final qualifying spot. And when they announced that I was going to the games, like it still makes me emotional to this day, because I like remember that, how special that moment was. And so for me, it was really cool that last and final day I got to interview Alex Gazan, who made it in that last workout. It was a legless rope climb one, and
yeah.
she punched her ticket, her first one to the CrossFit Games, and like chills, like to know and feel like how everything, like how special that moment was for her, you know. And so I like really like wanted to make that moment special for her to remember forever, which I'm sure she will, you know. And then it's not about me, it's about her and her journey, and like all the hard work it took to get there for all of these athletes. Like they give up so much of their time and their every part of their life to make it to the CrossFit Games. So really
Yeah, like say like it's nice to win. It's nice to be on the podium, but like that 5th place is like, because it's always like invariably like 5 points, or it's like, or someone like Will Morad like sneaking in, or
Oh my
like
gosh.
Colt Merton's last like 2 years where it's like that split screen thing. Although last year was fucking hell, last year was painful to watch, but like this year was at least quick. But
Yeah,
like, yeah, like it's all like fifth place is the one where it's, I think as well, because it's like at the semifinals, it's not a huge prize purse, so it's not like the person in first is walking away with 50 grand. It's like, it's not even a down payment on a car. So like
right.
when you come first, second, or third, it's kind of like, oh cool, that was nice. Whereas
Yeah.
like when you come fifth, it's like, it seems to be always this huge release. Like watching Alex, like it seemed like it wasn't even part of the plan. Like there was like, oh, I'm gonna go and do my best, but like games wasn't on the cards. Like it was like, I mean, maybe, but like next year is the real, like that's what it seemed like.
Right.
So yeah, it's always like getting that fifth place.
And I think it was
Like,
cool, like Kotler was back there, and everyone I had talked to was like, and I did, like I got to meet her and she is so sweet, and like everyone is just so happy for her. And Kotler was like, she has had like her life story. I don't know, has she been on your
no, I heard her. She's coming on. I heard her on Savannah's crazy story.
yeah. So like just like cool. People cheer for people who like I don't know, like she
I
just
don't know how Justin finds those people. He's like a magnet for like,
yeah.
like a turbulent past or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
that's why it's cool to get to interview him, or catch up with him on his athletes, and I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, he's been so successful through all these years, and seen a lot of this stuff.
How did so you were supposed to do color commentary, or you did do color commentary in Germany, and then was that just someone was like, oh, do you know who'd be good at this, and reached out, or did you say, hey, I want to start doing this?
So this is why I always tell people, I'm like, hey, and maybe like, so I went to USC, it's the University of Southern California, and it's a private school here, and they're very big on our networking. Like it's huge. Like that's what we're known for. And so I don't know, if always like in my mind, I'm like, put it out there. If you want to do something, if you want, like there are more people willing to help you out than not. You know what I mean? Like, so I had always, even when I was competing, I was like, I would talk to Sean and Tommy. I'm like, how do you guys do this? Or like, being at the games, I'd walk by and see them in the booth, like doing the like after, or, kept the wrap up show and desks like that. And I was like, how do I get out there one day, And so I had always just kind of like put it in their ears, or kind of asked like, hey, I'm interested in this. And then Mike Roth is one of the head production and of CrossFit Games, and we became good buddies. I did this thing called Grid. I don't know if you remember the Grid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I was part of Grid, but in 2014, I actually tore my Achilles at the Grid. It was a combine and kind of like and he tore his Achilles too. So we became buddies back in the day, just about it. And so yeah, I kind of always told him like, hey, I'm interested. I don't know if there's ever a role for me. I don't know. And so when they needed some people, they're like, hey, Jamie might be a good fit. Let's try her out, And you kind of, it's one of those things you get. I was like, oh, thrown in the fire, and they're like, we call it thrown in the fire with good friends, because these people that are.
Yeah, it's one of those where you say like, I'd love to do that, and then someone says, okay, you're doing it. You're like, oh, well, wait a minute.
So that's what happened. So I'm back up to January. I had COVID, so I'm in my bed and just hanging out. It wasn't so bad, but I get a call from them, and they're like, hey, Jamie, are you free in like a week or two? And I was like, yeah, well, I have COVID, but I'll be clear by then. They're like, good, we need you to broadcast. Can you help with broadcast for for Wadapalooza? Because Nikki Brazier, she just had her baby and she couldn't fly. Yeah, so she couldn't fly with her baby. It was just risk it. And so I was like, yes, immediately, because I've been waiting for it. I've always wanted to do it. And as soon as I said yes, I was like, what the hell did I sign up for? Like, and then I, even leading up to it, I'm like freaking out. I'm like, can I do this? Am I going to be good at it? Am I going to mess up? All these things.
Yeah.
But then after the weekend, I was like, this is good. Like if something scares you and it's pushing you out of your comfort zone and you're growing. So even though it's scary as hell and like you might not know what you're doing, like, I was like, everybody starts here. Everybody's going to start in this place. And then from there, like if you're willing to like adapt and learn and grow, that's why I'm like, give me as much feedback. I want to hear if I did terrible, if I sounded awful, if I made a mistake, which, I have a couple along the way. You learn and make adjustments and try to get better.
Yeah, it is. It's because I've done like emceeing at like like local kind of competitions or whatever, and I remember I was asked to do it, and I was like, yeah, like sure. And I was very like, I mean, if you're sure, I was
Yeah.
I was like, I've never done this before, but I mean, if you want me to do it, I'll do it. And they were like, oh, I think you'd be really good at it. And I was like, okay, like I'll do it. Oh fucking hell! I remember holding the mic the first day, like
You're like
the
shaking a little.
start. My voice has never sounded like that.
Oh,
Like
really?
I'll never forget how shaky I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe in beyond, like, I don't know how many like milliliters of oxygen your lungs hold. Like say if it's 100, I couldn't take in beyond 5. Like it just kept going out and in. Like so I was like, just take a fucking deep breath.
But
Like why? I was like, why can't I breathe?
yeah. Why do you think that? Because you're afraid to mess up, or because you're just like
Just nervousness. It was adrenaline, nervousness, like excitement, and
right, right?
yeah, like afraid you like. And I spoke. I'm good friends with Dylan, like from Wadapalooza,
Yes, yeah,
and I spoke to him, and I spoke to Greg, who did like Atlas and French Showdown and a few other things recently. And I was like, oh, like I've been asked to do it. Like, what do you think? And they were like, oh, you'd be brilliant at it. Yeah, you'll love it. And I was like, okay, but like, that's not advice. I was like, I'm looking for advice. And both of them basically said the same thing. They were like, and it's very different from what you're doing, I guess, but they were like, 90% of people aren't listening to what you're saying. He was
that's what
like,
I
like,
told myself.
yeah, he was like, the athletes are listening because they want to hear how long is left, or what's going on, or like, oh, someone's miles ahead or whatever. So he was like, they'll hear their name or they'll hear the timestamps, and the judges will hear the timestamps. And he was like, most people aren't listening at all, and the 10% that are, he was like, no, this is different from what you're doing, but he was like, they can't rewind. So he's like, if you say something stupid, the worst case is two people will nudge each other, being like, did he just say no? Maybe not. And like that's it. Like there's nothing else. And like you might have some people going away being like, oh, that guy was shit, but that's about the height of it.
Yeah,
Whereas I suppose when you're doing it, people can rewatch it, like, because it's saved.
yeah.
But yeah,
And like the
we
worst part, they're like, you got to go back and watch the film because I heard you guys you're like you hate hearing your voice, and
yeah.
and so I'm like, oh yeah, like going back and just kind of like the parts where you like just watching yourself, mannerisms, like what you're saying, all the questions, all kinds of things. But
Yeah. Is that like, oh, you touch your face too much, or oh, you don't lean that
um,
way when you're, or is it like what you say?
well, like at Wadapalooza, I being brand new, when they're like, oh, more for more on that, let's come down to Jamie Hagiya, and I would say or yes, or like a filler word before I would get started. So
That's
you
a great question. There's your next filler word.
yeah, so my producer was like, hey, Dreamer, when we come down to you, you can go straight into it. Or you can say, like, thank you so much, Sean, or something, because then it's like ties everyone all together instead of being like a separate piece, a separate piece.
Yeah.
So little things like that, I was like, okay, watch those words. And there was something else. Okay. I'm like, come down to me for this piece on the flip sled. Great. I do my piece on it. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I like walk off camera and they're like, Jamie, you got to stay there just a little bit longer. If they don't, as soon as you're done, if we don't cut straight to you, like you're still on camera. So now I'm like, just
Yeah,
just
yeah.
little things like that I wouldn't know. Like you just got to stay there just a little bit longer, like things like
Yeah.
that. So
You either have to stay there or you could do like a mic drop.
yeah. So yeah, little pieces like that. But did you like MC? Like, would you want to do more of that?
Yeah, I'm doing it again. I'm doing the same
Oh,
competition again. That was last August. I'm doing it again this August. I was supposed to do one this weekend, but we're going to France with family, so I couldn't do it. And then I'm doing another one in September,
oh, good. Look at you.
and there's been talk of doing a kind of a bigger thing, but I'm not going to talk. I'm just kind of afraid it's not going to happen. I don't want to say I'm doing this and then it doesn't happen. Like I'm not doing it anymore.
Put it
But
out there
yeah,
in the universe.
yeah, I think like it is like it is absolutely fucking terrifying. But like it is kind of just like, what's the worst can happen? I do it. I'm shit at it. Nobody asked me to do it again. Great, I've done it anyway, so it's fine. Like it's not going to affect anything else. It's not going to affect this, or it's not going to affect my job or family or anything. So who cares? Like it's
And like
just
even those little things that you don't really pay attention to. So Mike and Larry are the MCs, for Grant
yeah.
Games and regionals, and they were at Granite Games, and I'm like, these guys they work so hard. Like we were covering like some of the individuals. They were doing the community divisions. They were doing so they were there all day talking.
But even they do the commentary in the earlier heats
Yeah,
for some of the other things as well, like play by play and stuff.
yeah. So you might be live one day if they come down to you. They do like coverage.
Yeah, I doubt it somehow. I don't think it'll ever go that far. So Okay, so Wadapalooza, so you were kind of like, we'll say like finding your feet or whatever.
Yes.
Um, I think you were really good at Wadapalooza. And
Oh,
then Granite Games, fucking hell, like you absolutely smashed it. So like Granite Games is funny because um so you did it and you did much the same stuff that I liked at Wadapalooza, where it was like there's obviously stuff that you kind of just have to be. You have to be like chipper. You have to be like friendly, like pardon the pun, chipper. You have to be friendly. You have to be like, you know, smiling and engaging and all. Like there's all those kind of like basic, I suppose, like psychological kind of things that people want to see when they're looking at someone talking. You know, you need to be like, oh, they seem nice, at the
yeah.
very least. But I think it's what's interesting as well is you have that knowledge. So you have a knowledge of the sport, like you talked about Alex, and how you're able to say like, oh my god, I know exactly what she's feeling because it literally happened to me, or like something very similar happened to me. And you know how the athletes feel when they're coming off after doing such like a certain type of workout, because you're like, I did like something very similar in 2016 or whatever. um but then like there's there was a couple of moments at Granite where it was like, oh, we're just gonna go down like before the run rope. We're just gonna go down to Jamie, and you just did a legless rope climb. And then there was, what was the other thing? Was it
Yeah,
oh, I can't
pushing.
remember the name of, yeah, the sled thing, and you just started doing it, and it's like say with the legless rope climb, is it like, are you like, oh, do you know what would be cool, guys, if I do a legless, or is somebody else saying, oh, Jamie, when we come to you, could you do a legless rope climb? Because I'm imagining saying like, yeah, no problem, and then doing like, say like, you know, it's live, and you know, like literally everybody's watching, including the crowd. So you drop your microphone, and I'm thinking of like Medeiros jumping up and missing the rope. I'm thinking like of getting two pulls up and being like, oh fuck, why did I say I do this? My lats are on fire. I should have warmed up better.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, from them, they know they're like experts, and they're like, "Oh, this would be really cool, Jamie. Could you do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think so. Like, yeah, yeah. You know, like let's do it." So like, the sled push was fun, and but even then,
Yeah,
like, I was like, "Oh, my shoes!" Like, I kind of slipped out of my shoes. I was like, "Okay, hopefully I get this," you know, and it was fine. And then the legless rope climb, I was like, "Oh man, you know, they're coming down to me." I was like, I better warm up. Like, I'm not trying to pull my lat or my bicep or something when I'm
yeah,
like up the rope. So I did a couple like warm up things, and it's just really interesting because it's like literally right before the heat starts. So these
yeah.
women are like, you know, they're coming behind you and they're getting their chalk, and like I'm on someone's rope. I was pushing someone's sled, and I had to tell her, I was like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna put it back in place for you. I'm just gonna you do this real quick, okay? And then the legless rope climb, like I did it, and like the crowd was like, what is, they didn't know if it's like the heat start, what's going on, like I don't know. I was like, oh, and so they, one lady just started clapping, and then everyone started clapping, so they're like, oh cool, you know. But yeah, I think maybe, I think it just adds a little bit because I have, or if I'm able to do it, then not only am I talking about it, then I can demo or show what I was talking about. So
Mm.
I think it just adds I think they like that it just adds a little bit here and there, more than just like reporting on it.
Yeah, it's a novelty factor that's enjoyable. Like it would be less so if it was like dumbbell snatches and you just start doing like 10. That would be a bit like, why is she doing, like, we
Yeah,
all know. But like the legless rope climb is cool. And I think it gives weight to um it's like a nod to the fact that you understand what's going on as well. As in like, say like the Alex thing. It's like,
yeah,
oh fuck, she can do like this rope climb. And then like in my head, if I didn't know who you were at that point, I'd be Googling who you were at that point. And then I'd be like, oh, she's been to the game. Oh fuck, okay. And then like I'd be listening it a bit more carefully when you're interviewing someone, because you'd be like, oh, she might ask something interesting here.
right.
So I think it does add that side of things as well. Um you mentioned at the very start that you felt during COVID, and like, I suppose especially during COVID, but you know, partly when you gave up your own athletic aspirations or whatever, I guess, or your competitive aspirations, you said that you gained weight and that like you just kind of got just a bit lost. It sounded like a bit like, I read an article that you gave with Maureen Chalkup, and it was like, I think like I just think a shit ton of people have been there where they're like, it's like they just kind of slide backwards and don't realize that they are, and then one day they're like, oh fuck, and like they have so much more ground to carry, rather than like kind of catching it a couple of weeks in. It's like 2 years go by and it's like, oh bollocks, what have I done? um that must be like, so first of all, when you stopped so you were at the games in 2016, and you were at the games again in 2018 on a team.
Yes.
That must be pretty cool that it's your team. that it's like your gym's team. That I think that has to be pretty rare, is it? I think like Adam Neefer, and then I was trying to think of other people who are actually the owners of the gym and go on the team of that gym.
Yeah, Elise Umeda is from CrossFit 808, and she went to the games with her team so many times. She's amazing. But yeah, I think there's quite a few, or some here and there. But yeah, it was like super special, and I think that helps me out a lot too with like transitioning to broadcast, is that I did individual, but I also did team, so I kind of understand like the difference in both.
Yeah.
Like, it just gives you a different perspective if you just go individual or just go team. But yes, I gained quite a bit of weight during the pandemic. I think also, like, I'm Asian American, I'm Japanese American, and my sister weighs literally 100 pounds. Like, all my friends were very tiny growing up,
Yeah.
and so I've always been like the more athletic, bigger one. And I had said on, with Nicole, Nikki Brazier, I was like, I was known as like, there's two Jamies. I was Big Jamie, and so like, what that does to a little girl growing up, I was like, oh, I'm big. Like, I just have always been aware of my weight. And so, yes, CrossFit did help me in the very beginning, like, feel more comfortable and confident in myself, because I saw women who, I can identify with. And, that's why I say, like, representation matters. When you see someone who looks like you, I was like, cool. And she's getting praised for her body being strong and beautiful. I was like, awesome. Like, that's great. And it made me feel so much better. And then, yeah, I fast forward to the other side of it, where it's like, I'm in between Katrin and Jen Smith, and they have these crazy ripped abs, and mine just stomach doesn't look like that. It's aesthetics is a very tough thing, like, for men and women. I didn't realize, like, when I put these things out about body image and things like that, the men are equally, like, I've had men come up to me and say, like, hey, my chest or my stomach, it doesn't look like these other guys, and I'm insecure about that. And I was like, wow, like, I didn't even think that, think of that as well. But yeah, I did gain, oh God, during COVID, I gained a good 20 pounds, 18 to 20 pounds. And yes, it's aesthetics. Like, everyone wants to, like, look a certain way, or, feel good about themselves that way. But, like, it was, my clothes didn't fit. I was so tired. I was out of breath all the time. I had no energy. My back hurt. So it was my health and my aesthetics. And I had to make a change.
But it's like, it's kind of job dependent as well, because obviously you don't want, like, if you're the people that, if you're the person that people are seeing when they come into the gym, you want them to be like, you either need to be like relatable, where it's like now I assume you're extremely relatable, because you're in that position where, like, oh, I've been where you are, and I've been where you want to be, and I'm just ahead of you now, and I can help you get to where you want to be, because I know what it takes, and I know, like, whether that's to be competitive, or to, like, be in the optimal, like, performance or optimal shape or whatever. I've been there, and I'm getting there again, and whatever. But then the flip side of that is, you're the advertisement for the gym. So somebody walks in, and if you're not feeling energetic, and you're holding your back, and you feel like you don't look well, and your clothes don't fit well and stuff, and people walk in, they're going to think twice and be like, wait a minute, if that's the person that owns the gym and, like, coaches here